Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Unblocking Success podcast, hosted by yours truly, John Pearce, Head of Commercial for London Drainage Facilities. This is, of course, a London Drainage Facilities production. On today's episode, I'm very pleased and privileged to be able to be joined by the owner of MWA. I am, of course, referring to Matt Watts. Right, Matt. Thank you so much for jumping on down. We're going straight into this podcast now. Thank you for coming on. It's a pleasure to speak with you. As I mentioned, the whole premise and the idea behind this podcast is really just to get an insight into your working mind, your backstory, successes, failures, lessons along the way, and everything else in between. So I think usually the best place to start is at the beginning. So maybe if we rewind the clock and you take us back to early life as Matt in the working career.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here. I studied quantity surveying and building management at university.
Yeah.
I fell into that by chance, not really knowing what I wanted to do. But I saw QS get out of his BMW with a nice suit on, and I thought, well, should I try that one?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I did. Studied that for 4 years. Came out. Got a quantity surveying job with a civil engineering company called Schofield's. It wasn't the greatest job. It was, motorway work.
Yeah.
It wasn't very fulfilling seeing tarmac being laid and, doing the quantities on that.
Yeah.
So I decided to take a bit of a restock and thought I'd prefer to go into project management. It's a wider experience. It's looking at everything from start to finish and more in the building trade.
Mm-hmm.
So I took a bit of a step back, but got the experience with a company called Anchor Housing Trust. Where there I got great experience learning how to look at a residential extension or refurb from start to finish, from putting together a scope of works, tender documents, getting costs in, going out to tender, appointing, supervising your works, final account, snagging, issuing certificates. So and that worked well. So I did that for 2.5 years, 3 years. Took another job to a design and build company called City West. That was basically my brother-in-law's company based in Reading. It taught me how to not run a company in the sense of, they weren't the greatest payers in the world, people banging on the doors wanting payment, just it wasn't the greatest. So after a year, I moved on to a company called Argyle, they're called now, as a project manager, in-house project manager. And they're a serviced office company, or flex space as they're called today. And we were rolling out new buildings across London, the UK and Europe. And I did that for 5 years.
Wow.
My intention was always to work for myself. And with my project management and QS background, and with the economy taking a slight tilt at that time, we came to an agreement with Argyle that I could set up on my own whilst having a retainer with them. So
best of both worlds, great.
Best of both worlds. I had the start there.
Yeah.
6-month contract,
Wow.
3 days a week.
Yeah, great
But
setup.
it gave me 2 days a week to find other work.
Yeah.
And then after 6 months, we both agreed that we'd like to continue this arrangement. But it wasn't a set 3 days a week then. It was a fee proposal per building or an agreed fee for any expansion that they did on a project management basis. So MWA was formed on the back of that as a consultancy. And we carried on with that way of working for a few years. Then we were looking to refurbish a building in Pall Mall with Argyle. And we couldn't agree a contract on with the contractor. So the CEO then asked whether we would look to manage to build ourselves on more of a construction management basis, which we agreed to do. Why not? Give it a go. It went well. It was a big job. It was a £2 million fit out.
Stressful moments, obviously.
Stressful moments. There's always stressful moments. A lot of hours.
Yeah.
But the overall product was great. The quality was great. We came in about 25% less than the main contractor was charging because we did it on an open book basis.
Okay.
We enjoyed it. We thought, okay, we want to come out as a consultancy more and go into construction management.
That gave you the flair and the buzz to want to go and do that.
Correct.
Yeah.
But, at the time of my life, I was trying to be a bit more risk adverse because I had a young family.
Okay.
Wife, because we had a young family, wasn't working.
Yep.
So, you need to pay the bills.
You're trying to do the sensible path. You're trying,
exactly. You're not, fairly risk averse. I don't want to put everything on the line and then it all blows up and we're all, back to square one. So that's the way we worked for many years. Then I always had the ambition when family got the kids got a bit older, that maybe we would go into more design and build and, facilities management. And COVID probably gave us that chance to do that, to be honest, because we were just building up to that. Yeah. COVID gave us that time to reflect. We went for it, basically, design and build and facilities management from COVID
Did you do
onwards.
That in COVID, you decided to make that path, or was it post-COVID that you...
Well, it's no, during COVID.
Right, okay.
During COVID.
Yeah. Was there anything that pushed you into doing that? Was that the business decision that was forced upon, or was it, let's just try pulling on a new lever to see what we can get come out? How did that decision come out?
I think as a company, we've always tried to move with the times.
Yeah.
So we went from consultancy to construction management, to design and build, and then the added on facilities management. Yeah. So the design and build, as I said, was always something that I thought we could do well. Mm-hmm. I'd seen as a project manager how D&Bs worked. Yeah. Take the good parts, the bad parts. And I know that we're a very hands-on, responsive company, which a lot of people like. Mm-hmm. I'd like to think we're trustworthy, so we offer open book because it can be a bit murky, how costs are, broken down, and how can someone who's a client who has no experience in construction necessarily know how much ducting and mechanical costs or data cabling, So we like to be a bit more transparent. I suppose a couple of things that happened were I had a contact at a company called CBS Interiors based in Ascot, and they weren't going to get through COVID, as a lot of D&B struggled. Literally the phone stopped ringing. It's the orders were cancelled. So we then purchased the assets of CBS Interiors once they were into liquidation. Took a couple of their key members of staff who gave us that D&B experience.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, although I know the game, I wasn't fully design and build. So we brought in that experience, then we appointed a design team with design and build experience, and we built up a team around it. Mm. On the facilities management side, I've considered it on and off about setting it up. But a contact of mine who ran Argyle as CEO a few years back, and then was brought out, went into retirement, decided to come back to Argyle and brought it back, approached me and said, would you be willing? We currently, we now have the FM in-house. We don't want to do that anymore. We're not an FM company. We're a flex space provider. Would you consider taking on facilities management arm? Mm-hmm. So we set up a whole side of a business on the back of that.
Wow. Okay. Where was the hesitation for setting up FM? You mentioned there that you'd flirted with the idea on and off. Where was the hesitation for it? Was it just the unknown?
It's commitment cost-wise.
Yeah.
You need to have a certain amount of clients. And so basically, if someone came to me like they did and said, right, here's 25 buildings to look after, it gives you that business plan to run with that. Yeah. Maybe that's the risk-averse side of me again. So we literally had 10 weeks to set up the FM side. We took 2P interviews. Yep. We 2P'd over about 4 or 5 engineers, a couple of help desk staff.
How did you find that process?
It's quite tricky. There's a couple of when, I had to go meeting all the engineers, I felt like I was in a bit of a kind of union rep meeting. But, which isn't really, I really not like that.
Yeah. Because this guy? What's this?
Don't trust him.
Yeah, exactly. Outsider.
They realise actually I'm all right. So, a couple left. We had one help desk person who was their manager who left, which was quite surprising, and one of the engineers as a supervisor left. Okay. But that's their prerogative, Of course. They didn't, But I think now we still have a lot of those engineers are still employed 3.5 years later. Yeah. So
I think the big thing as well is a lot of people sometimes get that confused. It's a very daunting time. I've been sat on both sides of that. I've been in a company that's been acquired. I've then been the company acquiring. And so I get both sides of it. When you're being acquired, it's a really nerve-wracking time, and you're thinking, who are these people? They're outside, there's a stranger danger, and all of that starts to come into it. And then from the other side, you're thinking, we're buying this business because we see potential, growth opportunity. We don't want to lose anyone. That's not the intention in any way, shape or form. We're actually here to try and make it better. But I suppose it's all in the communication piece, right? And how you deliver and explain that.
And one of the other reservations, coming back to your point, was on the design and build side, we were getting a good reputation.
Yeah.
As a company, a good reputation.
Yeah.
I didn't want the facility side to give us a bad reputation.
Yes.
Because you know what it's like.
So long
I called you 15 minutes ago and you still don't have someone out. Or, I mean, the help desk people, we call them account managers as well now, they don't get any calls to say, thank you so much, you've done a wonderful job. It's all about what time's the engineer coming, what time's the call out there. It's not a lot of thanks often.
Yeah.
And you didn't want that to tarnish our reputation.
Yeah.
But actually, I think now we've got a fantastic team.
Yeah.
That even last week we were doing a pitch for someone and we went to 3 of our clients and said, can you write testimonials? Testimonials were fantastic. So it's actually coming back and, it's enhancing our reputation. It's what we wanted.
Yeah.
We don't want to be one of those massive FM providers that lose contact.
Yeah, because I suppose, well, it's that cliche thing, isn't it? Reputation takes a lifetime to build, and it takes a moment to completely destroy it.
Most definitely.
And you really have to be careful with the branding, messaging, and I suppose the ambition. So having that risk-averse side or streak within you probably has paid you really well on the run-up to that, right? I want to take it back to near the beginning, actually, because you said there that you'd always wanted to do your own thing. Where did that ambition come from?
Probably my dad. He worked for himself, maybe.
Right, okay.
I don't know. There's just something in you.
Yeah.
I remember once being on the back of the school bus.
Yeah.
And all the girls,
Yeah.
you're trying to impress the girls at some point, were saying, oh, who's going to do well and do that? And I remember them not mentioning me, and I was thinking, yeah, but I'm going to do really well. Yeah. I know it. I've got it in here. You just have that driving ambition.
Yeah.
And I still do it now. I think about work such a lot and just on it, and it's a massive part of your life.
Absolutely. I'm keen to explore that topic because someone once said to me, you're a frustrated entrepreneur. And I always get that idea. I suppose with being going into starting your own thing, you really have to want it. You can't, maybe it'll work out, maybe it won't. I suppose it's a case of move all the chips in and really give your heart and soul into making it a success. What kind of traits do you think that you've been able to either instill within yourself or you've inherently had that have helped you 22 odd years later be where you are?
Well, I think it's about, so people say, oh, you must be an entrepreneur. And I don't see myself as that.
Yeah.
But I probably am, but I don't see it.
Yeah.
How I see it is pure graft.
Hard work.
Yeah, you
Grit,
put all
determination.
Yeah, and you work the hours, you do it, you respond to people, you're trustworthy, and you just build up a reputation on the back of that. You're not greedy.
Yeah.
You know what you need to earn, and it's just pure determination and hard work and making sure everything gets done.
Yeah.
And you build up your brand based on that.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
Yeah.
Both my mum and my dad worked very, very hard, and I think that did install in me. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Have you ever sought external advice along the way in your journey up until now? Is there anything you've lent on, or has it all just been a case of
no, it's me.
Screw it, let's do it, and we'll
gut
figure
instinct.
It out? Yeah.
But my gut instinct, though, this is probably my worst trait, is or my best, depending which way. Get a gut instinct, and I just want to do it.
Okay.
Right. I try now to wait 24 hours and sleep on it. But, sometimes I just have this, come on, let's do it.
Yeah.
Why is it not done yet?
Do you know what? That's so funny that you say that. I literally run off the same thing. And it's only been recently that I've tried to do that 24-hour method. I was in a company once and they had on the wall, let me get it right, I think it was days and weeks, not months and years. And I put a line through the days and weeks and I changed it to minutes and hours, not days and weeks. And I've always ran at 1,000 miles an hour. If I find there's something that I think that the business could do, or an initiative that might be good to launch, and let's go into market really quickly, let's do it. But similarly, I suppose it's that thing of you could rush into stuff, not really do too much planning or thinking about it, and then it falls down really, really quickly.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I wish we had gone into design and build earlier.
Right.
But I think it's my personal circumstance that I didn't
Yeah.
You know, family support.
Yeah.
And I think I was risk averse of that. Although some people would say I took a huge risk starting my own company with a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old.
Yeah, I mean, that is...
So, but I don't see that as a risk because I was so confident.
Yeah.
So, but others look back and go...
And do you think it's because you had that at home that it kind of... the pressure didn't put you down so much, it gave you the steam in the fuel to want to carry on and push forward? Was that ever in your mind, thinking about you've got that pressure?
I think you always want... behind every great man and all that.
There's
no great woman.
I totally agree.
Not that Sue, my wife, ever kind of drove me to do this. You know, sometimes she'd go, why do you want to go into design and build? Or why do you want to do facilities? But I think she'll look back and go, oh, you did make the right decision here. Facilities is probably a bit more, because she's at our HR, talent culture, we call it now, in the company. There's quite a lot of churn sometimes staff-wise. You go, there's a lot of work for not necessarily a huge amount of return. Yeah. But I think we made it right. But and I suppose coming back to that, you know, you've got 2 kids, haven't you? You want to set them
on the right path, and you want to
show them how it's done, hopefully.
The example part as well coming through, right? Where would you say some of the biggest lessons you've learned on your journey within the 22 years of you working on yourself have come from? Are there any standout moments where you kind of went, we tried that, it didn't work so well, we learned probably more in that?
There's probably been 3. Well, in 22 years, I reckon I've had 3 fallouts. Okay, which I wouldn't say any were my doing. So, number 1, we were retained by a certain company. I won't mention a name. They were taken over by an investment fund, very aggressive investment fund. Our contract was cancelled. And they were a big client of ours.
So sizable impact on the business.
And initially it's like, oh my God, we might not survive this. Right. You know, it was scary. Didn't sleep for a lot of days, really. I had a guy who was a consultant, but he was badged up as MWA 3 days a week. I helped him start up. He worked for me for 12 years. And I was telling him what was going on. Meanwhile, we weren't being paid, but I was paying him, all of this. Then he struck a deal with the client direct. And I was absolutely flabbergasted. I never spoke to him again.
So that was something that was in the making.
And maybe I was too trustworthy. You know, it was really quite painful. He would argue, oh, work's work, but I don't believe that. My moral compass. And interestingly, what goes around comes around. Yes. We got back in with that client several years later. His contract was terminated, and then my phone kept on ringing saying, "Man, we used to work so well together. Can I come back?"
Wow.
You know, it's just like, so that was one. I would say.
So the key lesson or takeaway from that would be the trustworthy part. Was there any other writing on the wall if you look back on that?
Well, we settled with that client at basically cost. We could have got a lot of money from them because they were in breach of contract. But being worried about the finances, how much lawyers were going to cost, the income's gone, I was probably a bit too weak. I should have stood my ground more. So I think there's 2. One is that in-house person who went against you. It's never happened again. It didn't happen before. It's happened once. You have to be slightly conscious of that, I suppose. And then 2, I should have been firmer on the legal side and begged, borrowed and whatever, stolen to have lawyers because we would have got a considerable payout. But I settled for us to be paid what we were owed rather than the 3 years of earnings we lost. So that was one lesson. We had a very painful residential experience. We only did this job because of COVID and we were worried about work. We were a bit too trustworthy on the contract. It's a high net worth individual. We got out of it eventually. The moral of that story is really check the contracts. Maybe don't work with some high net worth individuals because they always get their way. And I prefer to just work with commercial companies, I think. So that's probably another lesson. I think that's probably it. Those are the two big lessons. Those are the two big ones that stick in the back of the throat slightly.
So take me through some of the success stories then that have obviously come through throughout the 22 years through MWA. I would imagine one of the first contracts that were awarded to you is probably going to be a highlight moment, right? Was that a standout?
Yeah, the first one, the 6-month contract, coming back home, telling your wife you're going out on your own, obviously.
Yeah.
I think I can reel off some names of companies we work with. So Net-a-Porter, Jimmy Choo, Nike, Converse, Grosvenor Estates, Not on the High Street, JD Sports, Amazon. I mean, some amazing names, which, 22 years ago when I started, if you told me I would have worked, I would have been happy to work with, I don't know, Mr. Smith down the road, really. Let alone those types of brands, which are real household names, which is a great achievement.
Do you find any kind of constraints or particular working ways attached when you're working with those types of brands, or not so much?
Not so much, particularly, I don't think.
Yeah, I suppose from the behind the scenes side of it as opposed to the public facing part of it, they're two totally different things, right?
Yeah, and we tend to do their offices more than their retail units.
Sure.
We've done some of their retail units, but it is more offices.
What's been some of the more interesting work that you've found yourself land? Is there any particular projects where you've really taken a shine to it personally, you've wanted to be more hands-on or not, or do you find...
I think probably two stand out. I think Not on the High Street was really interesting because... at that time, they were very, everyone was going to Not on High Street for their Christmas presents and birthday presents. Yeah. They're a bit less so now. Yeah. But there's other companies that have taken over quite a lot. But all their meeting rooms were themed.
Right.
So like there was one which was the gift meeting room.
Oh, okay.
So basically the meeting room was an inside of a present.
Oh, wow.
So you walked into the present with a huge metal bow on the inside.
Yeah.
Then there are other themes like the circus room with animals coming through the glass.
Right, okay. Yeah.
You had a theatre style with London vinyl on the floor, which is kind of like you walked through the River Thames. Yeah. So that was all quite interesting.
Yeah.
Net-a-Porter were always fun because we were fulfilling the owner's dream of what it needs to be, and it had to be so exact. Everything's black and white, very fashion conscious.
Yeah,
some amazing joinery pieces and things like that. Yeah. So you're really going through experience.
Yeah,
a lot of the fashion companies bring their retail units into, say, their reception areas.
Okay,
so if you walked into their reception area like Jimmy Choo, it was like going into one of their retail units.
Yeah.
It would be the same. It had a mirrored ceiling, the black floor, lots of, nice furniture, and gold around.
Yeah. What's the selection process like when you're going for the service partners that you choose to use on those types of projects? Do you self-deliver everything, or are you subbing to other outlets as well?
We're subbing.
Yeah. So what kind of process do you typically go through when you're looking
We have now, as we've got bigger, we basically audit.
Yeah.
The contracts managers will do an audit process at the end of the job, saying how they performed, whether it's from health and safety, pricing, speed, quality, all of those things. And then when we're looking at the pre-con team are looking to look at contractors, we then look to those scores.
Yeah.
So it depends which way we're doing it. I mean, if we're fortunate enough to not have to tender, which doesn't happen too much, unfortunately, these days, we would go to our tried and trusted, who we know we have market rates on, and we can compare those. If we're going out to tender, we will probably go out to 3 subbies ourselves on each trade to make sure that we're then
aligned.
Mm-hmm. We are competitive.
Yeah. What advice would you say to people that go through the tender process? Obviously, you've done it for such a long time, and the tender process itself can be as quick as anything and as long as the next thing, right? So is there any advice that you might give to particular companies when they're going through a tender process?
When they're tendering for us?
Yeah.
They've got to go through the detail. Because, there's nothing worse than chasing a subby and they're going, cost got to be in tomorrow, because we've got to submit Friday.
Yeah.
And then you know that they've just guessed it. It's just it's $5,000 there, $10,000 there, and it's really frustrating.
Yeah.
In fact, then I say I don't want to use them because they put no thought into it.
Yeah.
They've got to really allow the time, go to site, ask the questions, so we can go back on an RFI and ask them for any questions that they've got, and do it that way.
Yeah.
And, you know, we want to partner with people.
Yeah.
That's what we want to do. We want to be one happy family, really.
Yeah, of course.
That's how it is, as we do with our clients. We want to partner with our clients.
Yeah, yeah. What are some of the challenging parts that you come with or you've found over the years with running your own business? What kind of challenges do you typically come into?
Cash flow.
Cash flow
is always, obviously, these larger projects, you know, a lot of contractors have certain finances in place to help it loans, and we haven't done that. So we it's our own money as such.
Right.
We self-funded it. So the cash flow is always an issue because basically you're doing a valuation, then you're waiting. That then has to be approved by the QS or the CA, then issue a certificate, 7 days later, then you've got to wait 14 days of payment, although virtually every single client now wants 30 days. So you're waiting basically 2 months to pay.
Yeah.
And then all our subbies, joiners, or if we're all doing flooring, carpets, stuff, they all want deposits.
Yeah.
So that's probably the biggest hurdle, to be honest. You've also got a constant. You know, I went into this game because I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But you've got to monitor. Are your clients going to go bust on you? Your subby's going to go.
Yeah.
You know, it's a real challenge. It's much more than just do a good fit out. You've got to really monitor people's credits, whether you're going to be paid. You know, whether they. You know, if you've got to pay someone 70%.
Yeah.
You could lose that money if they're no longer in existence.
Yeah. Have you ever turned down an opportunity to tender or an opportunity to work for a client? Have you ever had to come into that? I've spoken with quite a few companies, and sometimes they say, we have to be quite particular these days in the type of work that we do want to undertake. Or have you been fortunate enough to not come into that?
I would like to say that we do turn them down, but we don't really on the whole.
Yeah.
We are starting to get a bit more fussy. We got to look at if a job comes in and the liquidated damages are too much, there's no point in us doing it because you're putting the business at risk. Mm-hmm. You know, if they're suddenly going to say it's 25 grand a week liquidated damage, you suddenly get 4 weeks overdue through no fault of your own because some parts not come to customers. Yeah. You're suddenly 100 grand down and you could have lost all your deposit. Yeah. If it carries on, you're suddenly putting the business at risk. Yeah. So we do as a matter of course, credit check, look at the LDs, and assess it. So I think as we're expanding, we will be more choosy what we do.
Yeah.
But, you know, people want everything done so quick, and then you've got another one who'll take 2 years to decide what they're doing.
Yeah,
so,
completely. Have you seen a shift in the market on design and build over the years? And if so, is there any more trends or anything else that's come through more so than others?
I think the market's saturated with design and build contractors, that's for sure.
Do you think that's the same with facility management? The reason I say that, I see a lot of pop-up small outfits within facility management, and then there's a big gap between the small and then the medium size, and then you've got, you know, the big players within the market. Yeah, so
with us, we're fairly new to the game in FM. We're doing it to be a little bit different. Yeah. So design and build with an FM arm. There aren't many of us out there who do that. Yeah. I think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It gives value to the company, but also makes a lot of sense. We do a fit out, we maintain it, or we offer to maintain it. Yeah. But we'd like to use the word boutique. Yeah. But because we don't want to be that big, but we want to offer a really good service. Yeah. So, I mean, we could be in that. So hopefully we'll fill that gap between what you're saying of the small to the medium. Yeah. You know, we'll be in that little pocket. Yeah. I mean, we probably manage now 1 million square feet on an FM side in London. Yeah. So that's you know, it's actually quite a lot when you think about it. I mean, I think that we're just getting started. But
that's a big geographical footprint, really, that you've got to hold on there.
And we're just focusing on London because our engineers, we've got 10 in-house engineers, because they can go by foot. Yeah. We don't need 5 vans. Yeah. But a company came to us the other day and said, "Oh, could you look at our offices in Brighton, Bristol?" and maybe Cambridge, and I struggle to say no.
Yeah, that's it. It's that cut-off point, isn't it? I know exactly what you're talking about. So we're often approached to go further afield. So we will go as high as Birmingham. This is on a reactive basis, as high as Birmingham, and then we'll cover the entirety of the Southeast. We typically say London by name, Southeast by nature. But then on a pre-planned basis, we would go further. But there's always that part where someone might say, well, will you go over to Wales? Will you do Cornwall? Will you go to the Isle of Wight? And it's really difficult, especially when you know the work's there, to turn around and say no.
I think our kind of basis, if we can take on a full-time person to manage that, then we can do it.
Yeah.
If it's just 2 days a week, then we've got to suddenly find them 3 days a week. It may be a city that we don't have as many contacts as London. Yeah. Whereas in London, if a client came to us and it was 2 days a week, we could find work for them 3 days a week elsewhere. Engineers. So it's a business decision on that.
I'm going to rewind and jump back as well, because I'm interested in that process. A lot of companies, from what I've just seen along the way, can sometimes struggle with knowing the point of when is the right time to take on more people full-time as a full-time employee. When is the right time to grow? Is it a set number that we need to get to? Is it a contract we need to land? How have you found that journey? And in the early days, how did that look?
I've always worked on the basis, and this is me being risk averse, you win that work, then you take on someone.
Yeah.
We've never taken, at the moment, the company has enough employees there and systems in place now to really expand without taking many more on.
Yeah.
Okay. But normally on, say, the FM side or even contracts managers, we'd win certain work and then we'll take someone on.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that, to be fair, is pretty much the way that I've always looked at stuff. It's say yes and then figure out the rest. It's kind of like my attitude towards a lot of that. Secure it, get it bolted down, and make sure that's
so people say, well, how are we going to manage it? Don't worry about it. Win it first.
We'll figure it out. Yeah.
And we'll do it.
There's a workforce out there.
People will come and work for you.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, have you noticed a skills gap in the market at all? Either from a subcontractor or from people that you're trying to put into roles within your business?
So on the interiors side, a lot of our trades are from east of London. Where we live, west of London, there is a gap, I believe. On the engineers side, I think there's also a gap. What we're doing now is we're training up all our engineers.
Yep.
So that they're all at a certain level, whether that be in health and safety, they're all going NRC, ERC 18th edition, so they're all coming up to a certain level. Mm-hmm. And then, we've remunerated them based on that as well. Now they're trained up, so we're offering more. But I think there is a skills gap, and I think it's probably going to get worse.
Yeah. Where do you see the answer to that? And then that in itself is such a minefield, politically charged and loaded question. But where do you see the answer to it? Is there a quick fix? Is it a case of you go further afield and you go abroad to backfill some of the skills gap? Do you pour more attention towards the apprenticeship programs?
If they're allowed into the country.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah,
I mean, there's, Brexit and then COVID it has been an issue. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And it's quite interesting because we had a couple of Romanians on, and in Romania on our books a few years back. And in Romania, their training scheme is amazing. Right. They cover like 8 different trades.
Wow.
So when they're working, they can cover so much work for you.
Yeah.
Whereas here we tend to be your plumber, your electrician, or your carpenter. Yeah. You're a bit more
siloed, and there's a cap, and you put that on, and that's what you're going to do. Trying to find the multi-trade person can sometimes be a bit of the unicorn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So take me through some of the processes now for MWA, as in you've got to a point now where you just mentioned you've got a good sizable workforce. How many are you up to now? Nearly 50?
Nearly 50,
Nearly 50, right. Automation and processes, putting that into play.
So Tori, who's our COO, who she came on board, I reckon, about 3.5, 4 years ago. She's a return-to-work mum.
Okay.
She is naturally operations, but she just she had that dilemma. Leaving the kids, going back to work, wanting to work, all of that time. Yeah. So she came on very part-time as a project manager. But it was very obvious after 6 months that she was too good for that role. And her mindset, her real skill set was ops.
Yeah.
So after 6 months, I asked her about becoming head of operations. She didn't instantly take it. It took her about 48 hours to approve it. And then anyway, now she's our COO. So her role is, and she's full-time now, is purely putting systems in place at the moment. So at the moment, we're going through ISO.
Yep.
We've just put a system in called SpirePath on the interiors side, which basically means that there's no gaps in the quoting systems, through to raising POs, through to issuing POs, through to all our cost sheets, all our contracts. There's a whole software package that has been made specifically for us that some D&Bs are doing. We have concept for the FM system. So again, all our clients can log into that and they'll see all their up-to-date certificates, paperwork, PPMs when they're next due, all the quotes outstanding, everything like that. So we're going a bit systems mad, but it's to protect the business, de-risk it. And then when newcomers come in, you know exactly what you're doing.
I think it's so important.
It is so important because before, you know, it was a bit, you know, it was working on less systems, but now we're too big to have any risk to the company. So those systems in place, people know how to do it. And then I think after this, we'll be there or thereabouts with all our systems in place to really
make
go
it
and get more working.
Yeah, I think what ISO is it you're currently running?
9001, 13001 and 15.
Yeah. So
14.
We've literally gone through the exact same process. We got our 9001, 13001 and 45001 environmental. So we did all three in one sitting. And then that was such a hard task to go through. But as I mentioned, we managed to get all three signed off in the one go, thanks to an amazing operational team. And sometimes people look at that type of effort and work and they go, you're collecting data for data's sake. When the reality is that you can fall into that trap, but processes and systems will allow a business to function and allow people within inside the business to operate and function with clarity, which is often missed.
We've got our first audit next month.
Yep.
And then by the end of the year, second audit, sign off.
Yeah.
I think by October we've got to do it.
Yeah.
But also, systems in place, but also you sometimes jump a couple of hurdles when you're doing tender documents.
Yeah.
Because they know you've got certain systems in place.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah.
You know, and if we're looking at some more framework agreements, you know, we've got a couple of nice framework agreements now. That helps because you've got those systems in place when you're looking at that.
Yeah. Do you see AI changing the landscape of your sector? Or
it already has.
Right. Okay.
I mean, I use it the whole time.
Yeah, same.
And we're trying to get all our employees to use it. So we have a couple of, quite a few staff actually that English isn't their first language, so they're using it for translation.
Yep.
Our facilities help desk, you know, they might not necessarily know what type of pump something is, so that, you know, they're getting that information rather than just Google it and not too sure. You know, it's very good on that way. We're using it on a legal basis on contracts just to put through to make sure, you know, quick summaries, what to look out for, comparing quotes, or we're looking to do a job in Paris, we're using to translate. It's just there the whole time, isn't it?
Just speed and efficiency coming through on it.
You know, certain things you're thinking, oh my God, that's going to change. None of us going to have jobs, like automation or anything like that. And AI is like, we're all going to be out of jobs, but we're not.
No.
It's just a different way of working.
Absolutely.
And it's a better way of working. It's just faster. Everything's going to be faster.
Yeah, completely.
Some jobs, you know, some professions will struggle a little bit more, no doubt about it. But it creates other jobs.
Yeah. And I think as well, it just enhances, it really can enhance people within their jobs. And it will enhance an experience for a consumer. For me, I always refer to our side of the fence, the service delivery side, as you really have to be communication specialists. That really is where a lot of the hurdles come from when communication isn't there and it all kind of falls apart. And I find that AI can just bridge that gap, whether it be helping people formulate an email response through to at the beginning stages of triaging phone calls. When a phone call comes through and someone's in an urgency and they need to find help and assistance quickly, it's fantastic at picking that up, recognising it and directing it.
And if you're doing case studies on your website, okay, so to make them all sound the same, you put them in,
that tone and that method.
And it's incredible. You could put in, I don't know, I mentioned Nottingham High Street. So if you were doing a case study on them, AI would look up and give you a background on Nottingham High Street to help you,
to do all of that. Yeah,
it's incredible.
Yeah. From MWA's perspective now moving forward, is there a particular sector in particular that you're looking to make more advances within? Are you precious or particular around that, or are you?
No, I mean, my background and my first client with that contract was Flex. So, there aren't too many people with 27, 28 years worth of Flex experience. 1998. So when I started out, there's 3 providers: HQ, who I worked for, Regis, and MWB. So there might have been a couple of other stray ones, but now there are so many. So I do think that's a selling point. So we work with a few providers. We're doing a lot with Grosvenor Estates on their Grosvenor Flex, which is a slightly different type of flex space, but great buildings, Mayfair, Belgravia, fantastic stuff. Argyle we do a lot with, and some others. So that's a market we like to target. We have just a Chinese company called Jingdong.
Okay.
Say that 10 times quickly. Have landed in the UK.
Right.
Not many people have heard of them yet.
No.
They're going to be called Joybuy here. Okay. And they're coming to take on Amazon.
Wow. Okay.
And
ambition, I like.
We tendered against 2 much bigger boys. And won that. And we're just fitting out their first London. Well, their second London office. They've got a small one in St James's in Victoria.
Okay.
So at 10,000 square feet. They're going to have 2,000 staff by the end of next year.
Wow.
They're already just signed up on 1 million square feet of warehouse.
Wow.
So you would have heard their name first from here.
Exactly that.
In China, they're also known as JD, but they can't call themselves JD here.
Of course.
Because JD Sports. But in China, they have a rapid service. And they deliver in 9 minutes.
9 minutes?
Yeah. Their head office in Beijing has 60,000 staff.
Wow. Yeah, that's...
They're coming to the UK, Holland, France.
Wow.
And Europe. So they're investing, and it's interesting. It's very interesting stuff. So that's a potential market. That's a potential massive client for us now. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah.
And just because we've been around for 22 years, we've done lots of fashion, we've done sports, we've done finance. So we're not Flex, as I said, we're not looking to specialise in any particular one. We believe we've got experience in all.
Yeah, for sure. Have you found any particular sectors that are more troublesome than others, or not so?
Well, retail obviously had struggles coming out of COVID.
Yeah.
I was thinking today when I was on the train coming in, it feels like the economy's really picking up.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
And naturally, I'm cautious. I'm not pessimistic, but I'm not overly optimistic.
Yeah.
I'm a bit half glass.
Yeah.
Half full. But it does feel, I mean, this week and last week, I've had an inquiry a day. That's pretty good stuff. And a couple of those, 20,000 square foot in Daventry, 30,000 square foot in Guildford, 10,000 square foot in King's Cross. There's some good, it just feels like it's picking up.
Mm.
And although we're a fairly small company, we feel the effects like big companies do, because we work with some of the big providers.
It all trickles.
So we feel it early, but we come out of it early.
Mm.
Do you see what I mean?
I do, yeah.
And it really feels like things are turning.
Mm.
The tube today was packed.
Yep.
Absolutely packed.
Yep. Yeah, the train for me coming in, to be fair, I thought exactly the same thing. I was jumping on a train earlier on and I was thinking it's a lot busier than what I remember. I very rarely come in at this time of the morning into central London, but it definitely felt much more busier now. And I think that the hub and the buzz are in here. Liverpool Street, central London is definitely...
I think that hybrid working is always good, is here to stay to a degree, but it's definitely getting busier.
Yeah. What's your take and thoughts on hybrid working?
Well, being the office fit-out people, I'm not really for it, obviously. Look, it has a place.
Yeah.
We have our staff in 5 days a week.
Yeah.
But we're very flexible with how we work with, you know, if people need to work from home for a day, that's fine. Yeah. Absolutely fine. Yeah. I think it's different. We've got an office outside of London and we've got one in London. Yeah. I think it's different from if you're London-based and you've got an hour and a half commute coming in, rather than if you live 10 minutes down the road from your local office.
Yeah, I see exactly where you're coming from with that. I do see a space for it, dependent on the industry that you're in. I think there's a lot that gets lost when you're not in an environment 5 days a week and you're not in the cultural atmosphere of that hub. The synergies, the cross-pollination of ideas and ways of working, I think gets diluted massively when you're not.
And I've got a lot of friends who, okay, they say people my age, you know, we don't need to be in the office as much. And that's probably true. But I do think the younger people, the graduates, definitely do to learn. Don't know how they would do it. But then I've got friends who are in their 50s now. They're working in this little study at home for the last 4 years. Yeah. And they're like vacant now. They're just, but they don't really realise. They're going, but you go back to the office. Oh, they've lost their drive a bit. Yeah. I truly believe that.
I definitely couldn't do it. I'm a social creature, and I just physically think I would. All colour would drain from me.
And I like coming home after work.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a nice feeling. You're separating it.
Yeah, going from your study, your office, your garage, whatever you might have, going back into the front room. That's not enough time to switch off. You need a podcast. You need something to listen to on the way home to de-stress yourselves, I suppose. Moving forward. Where do you see the future for MWA now?
Well, we've got a 5-year plan at the moment. Yep. So we've done a management buyout.
Yeah. What led you to that path?
I didn't want to go down the PE route.
Yep.
For various reasons. I'm not so sure how I'd be able to cope with reporting into someone. No, but seriously, I didn't think it was quite right at the time. We have a really good senior management team. Mm-hmm. So I need their buy-in to take the company where we want it to go, which is, probably a realistic 50% growth. Yeah. I think we could grow far, far more, actually. Mm-hmm. Especially if we are coming out of a flat period and the economy's picking up, our reputation's getting out there, more D&B, bigger FM. We've got the systems in place. So I think our senior management team are all brought in. I think most of our staff are brought in, actually. I think there's a really good feeling. We have really good atmosphere. People will see our LinkedIn posts and go, wow, you've got really good bonding there, Yep. Tomorrow we're dragon boat racing. Last week the facilities team were on the Rib, on the River Thames, on the speedboat going 30 miles an hour. We got some... In 2 weeks' time, we're doing karaoke for our summer do.
I must admit, the interactions, and I've only had a few in total transparency, but they've always been fantastic. And within our company, we have a key account manager that specifically deals with multiple clients, but one of them being MWA. And every communication piece she's had with Ryan, in particular, from her stance, has always just been absolutely fantastic. So it seems like a really nice place.
Everyone loves Ryan. He's got a great personality, and he's worked really hard. And he's done really, really well for himself. But all our account managers on the FM team, I think we've got really good banter, if that's the right word. People comment a lot on they do see us as a family. People like it that it is a family business. My youngest daughter's now working in the business.
Nice. Well, you can't replicate that feel.
No.
Corporate companies, despite best efforts, you can bring in as many different incentives and initiatives. You can never replicate that feel when you have a complete detachment or corporate ownership, in my experience. Having that SME mentality that grows and grows. We've been fortunate enough to be able to maintain and keep that, and it's something that we're super passionate about, always wanting to keep. But it's a hard thing to try and install sometimes, right?
Yeah, I mean, to get a good remember someone else at a Christmas party going, "Oh, Matt, it's amazing how you've managed to do this," because she should have her own company. And, we have Christmas end of year awards and things. And, people are generally coming up. Kieran got a 5-year award. We're giving a man hug.
Yeah.
Our facilities lady, Kasha, who won it, was in tears.
There's
a lot
pride
of
and passion.
Yeah. And that is difficult to do. But I think it's about being approachable.
Yeah.
Working hard, but having a laugh as well.
Yeah. So the future from here on that 5-year plan?
5-year plan is to grow it.
Yep.
And then I'll probably do another 5 years, and then another 5 years. That's just how it goes. I'm not looking to leave in 5 years. I've worked too much.
Do you ever see yourself a time hanging up the boots, or you strike me as someone that's work?
Well, my dad, who passed away last year, was still working at 86.
Wow.
My mum worked till she was 70, so not necessarily.
Yeah.
I think I would struggle. I think I would drive my wife crazy. There's only so much golf you could play.
Yeah.
So, I mean, ultimately, chairman type role, ultimately.
Yeah.
I don't see myself coming away from MWA, though.
No. It's always going to be there.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
Okay. We're coming close to the end now. What advice would you give to people coming through? Let's go on that one first. People coming through into your industry in particular. What advice would you impart on those?
Well, it's a difficult industry, isn't it? It's an industry where you learn the whole time. Different thing, it's only when you had lots of experience. I mean, something, say, an air conditioning fault might happen. You don't know why. Then you learn that, and then it happens again. But there's another reason. You're constantly learning.
Yeah.
You've got to constantly keep on top of things. Just be really, really organised. That's what I think. Write everything down, or have a notes, or have your task list. Make sure you don't miss things. Naturally, I'm not the most organised, but I have a task list, so I virtually never forget anything.
Yeah. I'm going to pry into that. I'm always interested in this. How do you do that task list? Is it literally just a pen and paper task list?
Trello. I do it on Trello.
Trello. Okay. Yeah.
Which is on my phone, on my laptop, on my computer, and just every time, write it down.
Yeah.
And then every day I'm looking at it constantly and updating it.
Yeah.
And to be, in our business, on the whole, we come to specialists like you about drainage. Mm-hmm. Ryan, as your example, he shouldn't know about drainage, but he should know that he contacts you to get that advice. And it's being the middleman and making sure everything fits in. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I think people think, "Oh my God, I don't understand that." They don't have to necessarily understand it. Mm-hmm. They've got to be the coordinator, the manager, the project manager to get it over the line.
Yeah.
And patience with younger people. They often want to, run before they can walk. I find that quite a common theme.
Yeah.
We've lost a couple of years ago. They're saying, "Oh, we want this promotion." But then when we tried them out on a small job, they virtually have a breakdown. They clearly weren't ready, but they think they're ready. They want the pay rise, which is very understandable. Life's expensive. To have that patience. All good things come to those who wait, and it does come. I'm a great believer. We're great believers in giving people opportunities. You grab it, you can go as far as you want.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting point as well. And I keep making this link for one reason or another, but we live in a time in the world now where everything is so speed driven and speed conscious, speed focused. If I'm on YouTube, it's all 15-second short clips. If I'm looking to order something, it's 9-minute delivery. It's all of this gratification and this facade sometimes on social media platforms that you see come through. And I genuinely believe that is filtering into the workplace, into people's mindsets to think, is entitled the right word, or is it a case of just the individual's perception of where they are within their own career and their own ability? There's always been this long-running part of people believe they're further ahead than where they actually are. It's their perception, but I see it a lot.
And it's very tough, because if you're a graduate and you're going to law, they get big money, especially in London.
Yeah.
But they work, unbelievable hours, and they can burn out. But just because you're maybe in construction and you're on a slightly lower salary, or maybe quite a lot lower salary, but the graduates do okay in that. It doesn't mean you won't be earning more than that law graduate one day. It's about taking that opportunity.
Yeah.
They could have their own business. They could be a director in the company, getting profit share. It's about doing what you're good at well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that is, and I think that's a real key part. It's understanding where your strengths are and being totally honest with yourself as to where you believe your strengths are. And don't be afraid to take external advice and external opinion. I always believe in the ideology. If it's a great idea, it can withstand criticism. And don't be afraid to search for that.
I mean, I've gone into an industry where I've never been on the tools. Some of the best contracts managers are ex, on the tools. But it is about getting the people who have been in construction. And getting their advice. But I know all the processes. So
what about people that are at a point, not the younger generation now, so moving onward a bit, those people that are thinking about, I'm ready for the next part of my career and I do want to advance up the career ladder. Is there any parting advice you might give to those people? You mentioned a moment ago, grab a hold of it, really work it and run with it. Is there any advice you might have for people that have got that aspiration to want to move up a ladder?
It's just keeping that hard work going, isn't it? And, maybe in certain companies, they don't have that progression that they can go there and they might need to look to move. If there's someone, they've got a boss who's only 40 and, they're totally ambitious 35-year-old, they might need to move on. But my eldest daughter's boyfriend's got a job, and he's saying, they get itchy feet because they're thinking sometimes, I want to get this pay rise promotion. Just do a couple of years, that pay rise will come.
That's it.
You're only in your 20s. It will come. And I know life's expensive. I'm not denying any of that. But sometimes just do the right thing for your career. By the time you're 30, 35, 40, you'll be up the ladder. And salary will reflect that as well.
Last question, I suppose, really from me, more of a reflective moment. If you could look back over your life now and perhaps have a sit-down conversation with a 16-year-old version of yourself, what advice would you give to that person? It could be any topic, any advice. What advice would you perhaps give to that person?
Wow, that's a question, isn't it?
Yeah, meaning of lifetime.
I don't know. I don't think I've made too many mistakes doing it the way I've done it. So I would advise them, you've got to enjoy what you do. That's the first and foremost. I've met many a lawyer friends in life. You go back and you say, would you be a lawyer again? I think I only know about 10% who would say yes. Whereas, they had good salaries and stuff. I think doing what you enjoy the most is the most important. So my eldest daughter is trying to break into musical theatre. So she does 4 different jobs whilst constantly auditioning. She's in an audition right now, so, but she's following her dream. And I think that's the most important thing. So because if you've got a dream and you enjoy doing something, you'll be good at it. And those opportunities will come.
Learn to love what you're good at, right? And follow your passion. You'll never work a day again in your life. That type of ideology.
You summed it up.
Perfect. Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and have a little chat with me today. It's been really insightful. And I suppose if people do want to follow the journey of MWA, the best place to go, LinkedIn, follow through from there.
LinkedIn, MWAprojects.com, LinkedIn, Matt Watts, it's me.
All the way forward. Perfect. Matt, thanks so much.
All right, thank you. Cheers.